guys, this is Mari from My Heart Races, and today we're going to talk about transitioning from a half marathon to a full marathon. There are no rules saying that you have to run a 10K before you run a half marathon or before you run a full marathon. The first race I ever trained for and ran was a full marathon. As long as you're trained and you have a solid base, you can run whatever distance you want. For those people who've run a half marathon before, you're wondering how to transition to a full marathon, this will be helpful. A lot of people who have run a half marathon before or several half marathons before usually come to me with the same question, and that question is, I burned out at mile 10 or 11 and I was done and I crossed the finish line and there's no way I can imagine doing that all over again. And to that, I say, number one, you were trained for a half marathon and that's the distance you trained for. Also, something mental happens when you're almost done with the race. And what happens in your mind is that you know you're almost done, so you know that you're safe to almost be done. So just because this happened during a half marathon does not mean it will happen during a full marathon. Actually, I'm sure that it will not happen during a full marathon, because when you train for a full marathon, it's a very similar way of training. It's building your mileage, running during the week, strength training, but it's very similar. The only difference is there's a lot more time involved and more mileage involved. So it's not gonna happen during the full marathon. Another thing I like to tell people who have run half marathons before and they wanna run a full marathon is that this might seem scary, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it. A full marathon feels like, technically, it's twice the distance of a half marathon, but it feels like 3. And here's why. The first half feels the same as a half marathon feels. The second half of a full marathon is very hard. It's very difficult. And it feels like doing that again 2 times, because the next 10 or so miles feels like another half marathon, and then the last little bit feels like another half marathon because it's really hard. So maybe I shouldn't say that, but I should warn you, it does feel like 3 half marathons, even though technically it's 2. One important thing to remember is, if you're someone who's run half marathons and you want to run a full marathon, is that distance is relative. And what this means is, to someone, anyone, 1 mile could be a really long, far way to run. And to another person, it's not. It's not a long way to run. Training for a full marathon will completely 100% change the way you think about distance. And it will become not as daunting as it seems when you run a half marathon. So for instance, when you run a half marathon, a full marathon is double what you just trained for. That's all relative. To someone who's run lots of marathons before, it's not as far because it's relative. They're just thinking what they know, what they've done before. So during that training process, when you're training for a full marathon, your perception of the full marathon distance will completely change. It will not be the same as what it was when you began training. And that's the beauty of it, is that towards the end of your training, you'll have run 20, maybe 22 miles in preparation for your marathon. And all of a sudden, 13 miles, which is what you're gonna run during your tapering at the end of training, 13 miles will seem like nothing. And before, it seemed daunting and it seemed challenging and almost something you didn't know you were gonna be able to achieve. But now it's nothing. It's something you know for sure you can do. So know that when you're training for a full, your perception and the distance is all gonna be something that's changed. Your mindset will be completely changed from beginning to end. Training for a full marathon and training for a half marathon are actually surprisingly similar. The mileage, you build it each week, you taper at the end. It's just that it takes more time, because more mileage means more time. it also takes a bigger toll on your body. You're gonna notice changes in your body. You're gonna notice aches and pains. You're gonna notice that the first time you cross a threshold and run more than you've ever run before, let's say, for example, the first time you've run 16 miles, I remember that day like it was yesterday, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to run 10 miles after this. And for me personally, it wiped me out. It wiped me out for the entire day. So know that training for a full is a big investment. It's a time investment. It's a big investment in your body and taking a toll on your body. But I believe that the more you struggle and the more that you toil and the more that you invest is just the more that you learn about yourself, and the more you learn how much grit you have, and you learn how determined you really are, and you learn what you're made of. And I think that's the beauty of the marathon, is that it's a really intense experience. And even training for it, it's a really intense journey. But for me, and it's also this way in life too, the more intense something is, the more you learn from it, the more you take away. And crossing that finish line, it tastes so sweet. It's the best feeling. It's the best feeling of accomplishment. And I did this, and I did this when no one else thought I could. And when I even thought I couldn't do this, I did it and I accomplished it. So know that yes, you're gonna invest more time, and yes, it might be hard on your body, and yes, you might have to create a team of your family and people who are helping you do this, but know that the reward is so sweet, and what you learn about your body and what you learn about just humankind watching the race around you is amazing, and what you're gonna take away from it is so much more than what you take away from the half marathon. All right, thank you so much for watching my video on how to transition from a half to a full marathon. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I hope you found it helpful, and happy running.